It was the morning of November 1st, the day after Halloween. In the small town of Maple Hollow, everything looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. The last of the orange leaves clung stubbornly to the trees, and every doorstep was a colorful mess of candy wrappers and half-deflated decorations. But as Ethan Carson stood on his porch, sipping his morning coffee, something strange caught his eye. The pumpkins were still glowing. Not just his, but all of them. Across the street, down the block, even on the far corner of town, every single jack-o'-lantern still burned with a defiant orange light that refused to fade. It made no sense. The candles should have died out hours ago, but somehow the carved faces still flickered and danced in the morning daylight. Ethan frowned, stepping closer to the pumpkin perched on his own porch railing. His wife, Lydia, came up behind him, a soft laugh in her voice. "Looks like the pumpkins partied harder than we did last night," she joked, wrapping her arms around him. But as Ethan looked closer, he realized the light inside wasn't normal. There was no wax melting, no trail of smoke rising from the top, and the flame didn't flicker or move with the breeze. It just glowed, steady and constant, like an electric bulb trapped in time. Driven by a sudden unease, Ethan reached inside the pumpkin, his fingers ready to pinch out the wick. The moment his skin got close, the light vanished, only to ignite again on its own a second later. Lydia froze, her light-hearted mood evaporating. "You saw that too, right?" she whispered, her voice tight. Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at the pumpkin's carved grin. It seemed different now. The corners of the mouth curved upward just a little too far, as if it were mocking him. The simple, happy face he'd carved with his kids now held a sinister edge. The morning passed in a strange, uneasy silence. Their kids, Noah and Ella, came bounding down for breakfast, chattering excitedly about their candy haul, completely oblivious to the tense energy that had settled over their parents. A faint, almost imaginary smell of burnt wax hung in the air, a scent that didn't quite belong. Around noon, Lydia, who was washing dishes at the kitchen sink, suddenly went still. "Ethan, come look at the Johnsons' yard," she called out, her voice strained. Ethan joined her at the window. Across the street, their neighbor's lineup of pumpkins was changing. The carved eyes, which had been simple triangles, had somehow widened. They looked darker, more hollow, almost human. And on the largest pumpkin, new markings had appeared, thin, jagged lines scratched into its orange skin, looking like fresh wounds. Lydia squinted, trying to make them out. "Is that numbers?" she murmured. A cold dread washed over her as she recognized the pattern. "It's our address," she whispered, her blood running cold. "Why is our address carved into their pumpkin?" That night, after the kids were tucked into bed, dreaming of sugar plums and chocolate bars, the Carsons sat by the living room window, watching. The street was shrouded in an eerie silence, broken only by the pulsing glow of the jack-o'-lanterns. They seemed brighter than before, their light crawling across the walls of the houses, casting strange, elongated shapes that didn't match the carvings. The friendly smiles and spooky grimaces had turned into monstrous leers in the darkness. Ethan's patience finally snapped. He grabbed a heavy flashlight from the drawer. "I'm ending this," he declared, his voice firm. He strode out onto the porch and, taking a deep breath, blew hard into the nearest pumpkin. This time, the light went out and stayed out. A wave of relief washed over him. It was just a weird, lingering flame after all, but his relief was short-lived. The second his pumpkin went dark, every other jack-o'-lantern on the entire street flared to life, pulsing in a coordinated rhythmic beat. It was like a single, massive heartbeat thudding through the neighborhood. The air grew colder, a damp chill that seeped into their bones. Then a sound drifted through the thin autumn fog. It was a whisper, faint and childlike, almost like laughter carried on the wind. Lydia clutched Ethan's arm, her knuckles white. "Did you hear that?" she breathed. The laughter stopped abruptly, and in perfect unison, Every single light went out. For a moment, absolute darkness and silence ruled the street. Then, one by one, with an almost theatrical slowness, the pumpkins lit up again. But this time their glow was brighter, more intense than ever before. And their faces weren't smiling anymore. Every single pumpkin from one end of Maple Hollow to the other now bore a face twisted in a silent, agonized scream. Lydia stumbled back from the window, a strangled cry escaping her lips. Her hands flew to her mouth as she shook uncontrollably. Ethan, fighting his own rising panic, lifted his phone, his first instinct to record what was happening. But the screen glitched wildly. Static lines fractured the image, and through the distortion he could see dark, distorted shadows moving between the pumpkins, like spectral figures caught mid-step, their forms warping in the unnatural light. And then they heard it. A faint knock at their front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. They echoed through the silent house, each one a hammer blow to their frayed nerves. Ethan and Lydia froze, their eyes locked in shared terror. Slowly, Ethan turned toward the sound. He crept to the door, his heart pounding in his chest, and peered through the peephole. There was no one there. The porch was empty. There was only his own reflection staring back at him, a reflection bathed in a sinister, flickering orange light. The light wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside his own house, from somewhere right behind him. Thank you so much for joining me on this chilling journey into Maple Hollow. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Let me know in the comments what you think happened next. Stay safe and see you in the next video. Ethan stood frozen at the door. The sound of those 3 knocks still echoed in his mind, like an unfinished sentence. It was a solid, deliberate sound, not the playful rap of a trick-or-treater, not this late. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken questions. From the living room, Lydia's voice broke the stillness, trembling just enough to betray her fear. Ethan. Who was it? He didn't answer. He couldn't. His hand rested on the cold brass doorknob, his own breath catching in his chest. He turned the knob and pulled the door inward, slowly, as if expecting something to spring from the darkness. The cold night air rushed in, carrying a thick, disorienting fog that swallowed the streetlights and muted the world. A wave of relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. Something caught his eye, something that hadn't been there minutes ago. A jack-o'-lantern sat squarely in the middle of their welcome mat. Its orange skin seemed to glow faintly in the gloom. Lydia stepped up behind him, her hand gripping his arm. She whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's not ours." Theirs was on the porch railing, a goofy, smiling face carved by their son, Noah. This one was different. Ethan crouched down for a closer look. The carving was crude, almost violent. Jagged, uneven lines gouged into the flesh of the pumpkin. But it wasn't a face. It was a clock, its hands frozen at 3 o'clock. 3 a.m., the exact time the knocking had started. A chill that had nothing to do with the night air crawled up his spine. He backed away, his heart beginning to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. "Someone's messing with us," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Some teenager with a bad sense of humor. But Lydia shook her head, her eyes wide with a primal fear he'd never seen before. "Ethan, it's warm." He reached out a hesitant hand. The pumpkin's surface radiated a faint, unnatural heat, as if it had been burning from within for hours. And then he heard it. A soft, rhythmic thumping from inside. Suddenly, the porch light above them flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. The old house groaned, a symphony of creaks and settling wood that usually went unnoticed, but now sounded like a warning. A strange, collective rustling, like dozens of feet brushing through dry leaves in perfect, synchronized unison. Ethan grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight he kept by the door, its powerful beam cutting a sharp white line through the swirling fog. He aimed it toward the road, trying to pinpoint the source of the noise. and then he froze. The pumpkins on every doorstep were gone. Every single one. The friendly, grinning faces, the spooky scowls, the amateur carvings of his neighbors, all vanished. Only the fog remained, coiling and shifting as if something unseen was moving within it, something large and getting closer. He didn't hesitate, the sound echoing through the house and through the deadbolt. The click of the lock felt pitifully inadequate. Lydia's breathing was sharp and shallow, little gasps of panic. "We need to wake the kids," she said, her voice strained. "We need to get them." They rushed up the stairs, their footsteps thundering in the sudden, oppressive silence of the house. They burst into the children's room, expecting something. But everything looked normal, peaceful. Their daughter, Maya, was fast asleep in her crib, and Noah was in his bed, his little pumpkin-shaped nightlight casting a gentle, comforting orange glow on the wall. Ethan moved to his son's bedside, a sense of surreal calm settling over him. It was just a dream, a waking nightmare. He bent down to gently shake Noah awake, to reassure him, to reassure himself. "Noah, buddy, wake up." Lydia touched Noah's hand, then snatched hers back with a choked gasp. "He's ice cold." Panic surged through Ethan again, hot and sharp. He shook Noah harder this time. "Noah!" He sat up, his movements stiff and unnatural, and looked directly at his mother. His voice was a soft, hollow whisper that didn't sound like his own. "Mom, the pumpkins are watching." A raw, piercing sound of pure terror. Ethan grabbed Noah by the shoulders, shaking him, trying to break whatever spell had taken hold of him. "Noah, snap out of it!" And at that exact moment, the lights in the room went out, plunging them into absolute, suffocating darkness. For a heart-stopping second, there was nothing but the sound of their own frantic breathing. Then, faintly, a soft orange glow began to creep under the bedroom door, like firelight crawling across the hall floor, inch by silent inch. Ethan turned, his blood running cold, and looked through the window. He saw them. The pumpkins were back, lined up across their lawn, across the street, down every sidewalk as far as he could see. Hundreds of them, all glowing with an intense, furious light. Only now, each one had a face. They seemed to be formed from the very pulp of the pumpkins themselves. Distorted, twisted versions of human expressions. Faces contorted in agony, mouths stretched in silent screams, eyes weeping trails of dark pulp. They were a gallery of nightmares. And one, sitting directly in the center of his lawn, looked just like him. Ethan stumbled back from the window, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. This isn't real. It wasn't from one source, but from everywhere at once. From the walls, from the floor, from inside his own head. A dry, rustling sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. As the last word faded, the front door downstairs creaked open. A slow, deliberate, groaning sound that promised entry to something that didn't belong. Footsteps followed, heavy, dragging, echoing through the hollow space of their home. Lydia clutched Noah, who remained eerily still in her arms. Her voice cracked, a desperate plea. "Ethan, what's happening to our son?" Its shape was tall and gaunt, flickering like firelight, its form indistinct and wavering. It was faceless, but where its eyes should have been, two hollow sockets glowed faintly with that same internal fire. In one hand, it held a freshly carved pumpkin. In the other, a melted candle, its wick still burning with an impossible, smokeless flame. Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself between the figure and his family. "What do you want?" The figure tilted its head, a gesture that was shockingly human. The whisper returned, louder this time, layered with a chorus of other voices, all echoing the same words. "The night isn't over yet." And then every single pumpkin outside flared. The whole street, the whole neighborhood was consumed in a blinding orange light brighter than the sunrise. Lydia screamed, instinctively shielding Noah. Ethan shut his eyes tight against the searing glare, but even through his eyelids he could see that impossible, burning glow. When he opened them again, the light was gone. The room was empty. No Noah, just a profound, crushing silence. He was alone. On the bed, where his wife and son had been just a second ago, sat a single, small pumpkin. Carved into its side were 3 words that sealed his fate: Happy Halloween again. And from downstairs he heard it once more. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the front door. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I have a story for you that will make you think twice before ever blowing out a jack-o'-lantern again. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway of his son's empty room, a cold dread seeping into his bones. The silence was a heavy blanket, broken only by the frantic thumping of his own heart. On the bed, where his son Noah should have been sleeping, sat a single pumpkin. Its carved grin seemed wider now, sharper, almost alive. The words etched into its flesh. Happy Halloween again, pulsed with a faint, sickly orange light, each flicker like a weak, sinister heartbeat. He whispered their names into the void, a desperate prayer. Lydia. Noah. But only the whisper of the autumn wind through the eaves answered him. The air was thick, cloying with the smell of burnt wax and something else, something like old earth and decay. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the unnerving feeling of being watched. Down the hallway, a sound. A slow, deliberate dragging across the old wooden floor. It was a sound that didn't belong in his home, a sound that made every nerve ending scream. Ethan grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight from the nightstand, its beam trembling in his unsteady hand as he aimed it down the hall. The hallway was empty, but his blood ran cold when he saw the walls. Every single picture frame, cherished memories of birthdays, holidays, summer vacations, had been thrown to the floor. The glass was shattered, and the smiling faces of his family, of Lydia and Noah, had been violently scratched out by something unseen, leaving behind a gallery of faceless ghosts. He took a cautious step forward, the floorboard groaning under his weight like a dying man. The sound echoed in the oppressive silence. Then, from directly behind him, a faint giggle. It was high-pitched, childlike, and it turned his blood to ice. His heart leaping into his throat, the flashlight beam cutting wildly through the darkness of the bedroom. But the pumpkin on the bed had turned. It was now facing the door, its carved eyes seeming to follow his every move. Ethan stumbled backward, his heel catching on the edge of the rug. He fought for balance, his breath catching in his chest. The lights in the hallway flickered once, twice. Darkness, absolute and suffocating, swallowed the house. His feet fumbling in the blackness. He shouted for his family, his voice cracking. He burst into the living room, his eyes struggling to adjust. The front door, which he was certain he had locked, stood wide open again. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in from the night, coiling across the floor like a living thing. Through the ghostly tendrils of mist, he could see the street outside, and his heart stopped. The entire neighborhood was bathed in a faint, hellish orange glow. The pumpkins were back, on every porch, every lawn, every doorstep. But this time, they weren't just sitting there grinning their silent grins. They were moving, crawling across the manicured lawns, dragging themselves with an unnatural, skittering motion, all of them converging on his house. With a strangled cry, he slammed the door shut, fumbling with the deadbolt until it clicked into place. He leaned against the wood, his breathing coming in fast, shallow gasps. Then a voice cut through his panic, soft, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. "Ethan?" He turned sharply, his eyes darting toward the kitchen. Lydia stood by the counter, her back to him, her silhouette framed by the dim light filtering through the window. Her hair was a mess, tangled and wild, and her clothes seemed darkened, almost as if with ash. Beside her, so still he almost didn't see him, stood Noah. His small hand was clutched tightly in hers. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled his knees, washed over him. "Lydia," he gasped, his voice thick with unshed tears. He took a step, then another, running toward them. But when she turned, he froze mid-step. The relief curdled into pure terror. Her eyes weren't right. They glowed with the soft, flickering light of a candle flame, but they were hollow, empty voids. And Noah, his son's face was pale, a waxy, unnatural white. Faint orange lines like veins of fire were carved into his skin, pulsing with that same sickly light from beneath the surface. "You shouldn't have blown it out," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. Ethan backed away, shaking his head, a denial forming on his lips that he couldn't speak. "You're not them. You're not my family." And a chilling resonance entered it, as if two distinct tones were overlapping. Halloween doesn't end until the lights go out. As she spoke the last words, every window in the house lit up at once, not with electricity, but with a roaring, furious orange fire. Outside, hundreds of jack-o'-lanterns now surrounded the house. Their grotesque, leering faces were pressed against the glass, their internal flames burning with an infernal intensity. Ethan turned and ran, pure instinct taking over, slamming the heavy wooden door behind him and fumbling with the bolt. The walls rattled with a chorus of whispering voices, 1,000 dry, rustling chants all repeating the same terrifying phrase over and over again. The pumpkins never went out. The pumpkins never went out. His eyes darted around the dim, cluttered basement. He spotted his old toolbox on a dusty shelf, wrenched it open. He turned and smashed the nearest pumpkin sitting on a shelf, one he decarved with Noah just days ago. But instead of stringy pulp and seeds, a thick black smoke poured out of the shattered gourd. The smoke filled the air with the smell of sulfur and ash, and carried on it the sound of distant, echoing laughter. The single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered once more. And then it died. A moment later, the light came back on, but it was different. It was a soft, warm, orange glow. Lydia was standing at the bottom of the stairs. In her hands, she held the last glowing pumpkin, the source of the light. Its carved face was a perfect, serene smile. "Come back to the light, Ethan," she whispered, her voice a soothing, hypnotic lullaby. "It's still Halloween." The candle inside her pumpkin flared, its flame growing brighter and brighter. The orange light shifted, intensified, turning into a brilliant, blinding white. Ethan raised a hand to shield his eyes, a scream tearing from his throat as the entire basement, the entire world, was swallowed by that all-consuming, terrible light. The white light vanished as quickly as it came. Ethan gasped for air, his lungs burning. He blinked, and the world slowly came back into focus. He was lying on his own living room floor. Morning sunlight, soft and golden, poured through the curtains. Outside, birds chirped a cheerful, oblivious tune. The pumpkins. They were gone. He pushed himself up, his muscles aching. He blinked hard, trying to clear the lingering haze from his mind. "Lydia?" he whispered, his voice raspy. The silence that answered was absolute. There was no trace of smoke, no lingering fog, no smell of fire. Only stillness. The house looked pristine, spotless, as if the nightmare of the previous night had never happened at all. His phone buzzed on the floor beside him. He snatched it up, his hand trembling slightly. The screen read, 7:03 a.m., November 1st. A wave of relief washed over him, so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He let out a shaky breath that was half laugh, half sob. "It's over," he whispered to the empty room. "It's finally over." But as he pushed open the front door to greet the new day, a cold dread began to creep back in. Something was wrong. The entire street was empty. No cars parked in driveways, no dog walkers, no distant hum of traffic. No wind rustled the autumn leaves. It was a perfect, silent tableau. Yet, on every porch, a single pumpkin remained. They weren't glowing anymore, but they seemed to be watching. Their faces were blank, just freshly carved, empty circles where eyes and mouths should be. A shiver traced its way down Ethan's spine. "Hello?" he called out. His voice seemed to stretch down the street, echoing in the void, as if it had nowhere to go and no one to hear it. His eyes fell on a newspaper lying on the sidewalk, folded neatly as if just delivered. He bent down and picked it up. His blood ran cold as he read the date on the front page. October 31st. No. That can't be right, he muttered, his heart starting to hammer against his ribs. He dropped the paper and sprinted back inside, slamming the door behind him. He ripped the decorative calendar from the fridge. The big, grinning ghost on the page hovered over the same date. October 31st. All the clocks in the house, digital and analog, had reset. They all read 7:03 a.m. On the kitchen counter, Lydia's favorite coffee mug sat, a delicate wisp of steam rising from it, as if she'd just poured it seconds ago. Then came a sound that made his soul freeze. A faint knock at the front door, 3 times. Thump, thump, thump. Slow, deliberate. Every nerve in Ethan's body screamed at him not to move, not to answer, hide, run. But his hand moved on its own, a puppet on an invisible string, reaching for the doorknob. His fingers closed around the cold brass, turning it against his will. He pulled the door open. A little girl stood on his porch, dressed in a classic witch costume, holding a plastic, pumpkin-shaped bucket. Her face was completely obscured by the shadow of her pointed hat. "Trick or treat," she said, her voice soft and unnervingly calm. Ethan blinked, his mind struggling to reconcile the morning sun with the scene before him. It's morning," he stammered. The girl tilted her head, a gesture that seemed both innocent and profoundly sinister. "Then why are the pumpkins still on?" He looked past her, and his world shattered. The street was no longer empty. Children in a dizzying array of costumes swarmed the sidewalks. Orange string lights blinked to life across every lawn and porch. And the sky. The bright morning sun was gone, replaced by the deep, bruised purple of dusk. It was Halloween night. Again. Ethan stumbled back into his house, shaking his head in disbelief. No, I made it through. I saw the morning." The little girl offered a small smile, and in the dimming light, her teeth seemed to glow faintly. Nobody ever does. Behind her, one by one, the pumpkins on the street relit. A soft orange glow bloomed from one porch, then another and another, until the entire neighborhood was burning in an inferno of jack-o'-lantern fire. The little girl dropped her candy bucket. It clattered on the porch steps, and from inside it, a small, singular flame flickered, pulsing like a tiny, wicked heartbeat. Ethan finally broke free from his paralysis. He turned to run, to flee deeper into the house, but his own reflection in the hallway mirror stopped him cold. He wasn't himself anymore. His eyes were glowing with the same hellish orange light as the pumpkins. Deep, carved lines were etched into his skin. He touched his face, feeling the unnatural grooves, the transformation that had already taken place. From outside, the sound began again. The looping, echoing laughter of hundreds of children, the same sound that had haunted him all through the night. The lights in his house dimmed, casting long, dancing shadows. He looked out the window and saw the pumpkins outside begin to float, detaching from their porches and drifting slowly upward into the black sky, like embers from a great fire, like souls returning home. Ethan raised his trembling hands, watching them glow in the darkness. He was one of them now. "Please," he whispered, the sound a ragged plea to the uncaring night. "Let it end." A final voice whispered on the wind, carried on the chilling laughter. It was calm, endless, and terrifyingly familiar. "It never ends. It's still Halloween." On the table, the screen of his phone lit up one last time. October 31st, 7:03 a.m. and as the world faded to black, the last thing we see is the faint glow of a single pumpkin on the porch, its carved face slowly, impossibly, twisting into the terrified features of Ethan's own. Thank you so much for listening to this tale. If you enjoyed this spooky story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more chilling content. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Ethan's fate. Until next time, stay safe and sweet dreams.